The forgotten soloing method. I had jazz guitar lessons at music college, a few of those, and I did a lot of stuff to do with Charlie Christian, basing chord tones inside scales and around chord shapes where you look at the chord. And so Charlie Christian, that idea of playing the notes around the chord shape just seemed very intuitive to me. But a lot of my contemporaries, everyone was just playing pentatonic stuff. And I kind of think to myself, I don't know if you think it's right, but Chuck Berry took a lot of his style, I think, off Fats Domino, translating that idea from piano into guitar, and essentially basically ended up exploiting the whole of the thing with the pentatonic scale. And so it just ended up that everybody kind of gravitated towards this box one minor pentatonic thing. And that's where all the Chuck Berry licks is. This is why I call it the Chuck Berry zone. It's all in this. You got all this business here, and everybody just jumped on that. So really, I think that caused a little bit of a drop-off in this idea of chord tone soloing. It didn't really amongst the jazz community, but mainstream guitar, it took a little detour. And that was good, because rock came out of that as well. It just made it more accessible, and everybody could play the box one, instead of trying to learn something that sounds difficult, chord tone soloing. But it isn't as hard as you think, because I kind of summed it up as saying that basically all you're doing is you following the chords. The thing with the pentatonic I find is awkward. Basically, when you place the scale over the top of a chord, the pentatonic, it gives you kind of this blunderbuss approach, and that's why I call it the blunderbuss. When you play the notes, how they are sitting on top of the chord that is happening in the now. Remember, we talk about the now, the underlying chord in the now. How the notes sit on top of that, they determine the overall name of the chord that's happening in that now. I should explain what a blunderbuss is. A blunderbuss basically is like a shotgun that's shaped like a trumpet. And the idea is that you chuck any old muck in there, nuts, bolts, screws, all that sort of stuff, picks in it, charge it up, shoot that out, and it sprays really wide, and it hits absolutely everything. And that's why I think the pentatonic can be like that. So for instance, if I play this A7 chord, and I explained this in the original video, if I play this here, then what happens is most people will, by default, will use the box one pattern on top of that. That's that pentatonic pattern. 5 8 5 7 5 7 5 7 5 8 5 8. There, like that. Yeah, and it kind of works because the root and the flat 7 are part of the chord, but the third isn't from that scale. So if I play that chord, then you have to treat the notes differently. So really, it still works, but you have to manipulate the strings, which is the great thing about guitar, because we can slide, we can bend, and we can do all sorts of cool things to change the sound of the notes. So really, when that chord's happening, if I play that note, I'm changing the underlying chord in the now. Yeah? So I'm just adding another flat 7 on there. There's a 5th. Might not want the 5th. Might not want that 4th, because that would be an 11th. And then it starts to make the chord sound a little bit more complicated. So we've got this idea here. Now it works to a degree, but like I say, it lacks a little bit of finesse, and that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to build some finesse in here. I'm going to talk about the cage system. The cage system, we don't want to just think about it in just one sequence that we're using. What we can do is we can take some chords out of the cage system and build a framework to use for our chord tone soloing. So what we're going to do is we're going to reintroduce this chord tone soloing. Eyup, if you're sick of pausing my YouTube lessons and scribbling down chords and diagrams, well, I've got you. PDF Club gives you a library of over 350 exclusive downloadable and printable guitar handouts and PDFs with chord charts, diagrams and worksheets all ready to rock. Just grab what you need and get back to playing. It's the perfect partner for my YouTube video lessons. Check it out now at rickysguitar.com/getpdfclub. Now back to the lesson. If we look at the cage system, just for those people who don't know what the cage system is, basically the word caged is an acronym for the 5 shapes that we have, the 5 master shapes All shapes on the guitar are caged shapes. So we have a C shape. I can modify that shape so it looks like that, and it doesn't even look like it's a C shape, starting not to look like a C shape now, but it doesn't matter. All shapes are going to be caged, yeah? So there's the C shape. We've got the A shape, we've got the G shape, we've got the E shape, and we've got the D shape. And if you already know cage, this is a good recap. Now, we can divide those caged shapes into two categories. And the way I think about it, how the fingers are organised. If I play that first one, the C shape here, I'm starting on the root note here. This is what I call root position triad. So I got root, third, fifth. Straight away in the bottom three notes of that chord, root, third, fifth. And then notes get repeated again, because when you play a C chord here, there's two root notes, there's two fifths, and there's one third. No, there's two thirds. Yeah, two thirds, what am I saying? I can iron that double third out by putting my pinky on there and having another fifth. So this is root, third, fifth. That's just R3-5, if you want to think about it in that, or 1-3-5. There's another one that follows the same kind of pattern, and that's the G chord. And the G chord goes root, third, fifth in those strings there, and then we've got repeats in some order or other. Yeah, so we've got root, third, fifth, root, fifth, root. So you've got three roots in a G chord. Yeah, if I play it like that. However, if I play it what I call the Bob Dylan way, like that, with three fingers, then I get two thirds, because there's a B there and there's a B there. So you're gonna get to know all this stuff, but really, the only information I want you to retain is that the first three notes, root, third, fifth. And then on the G, root, third, fifth again. That's the C and the G chord taken care of. What we have left is the E, the A, and the D shapes. And I think the beautiful thing about this is where you put your fingers tell the story. So let's have a look at this. Here I've got my E chord. This is an E major. Now, if you look here, how many fingers have I got on? I've got 3 fingers on. Now what I'm going to do is play the other 2 shapes out of that cage sequence that I haven't played yet. I'm going to play the A shape. You might play the A shape like this. I play it like this because I like the ease of going down to that A major 7 and then to the A7 there and just using that shape to slide up. It's nice and easy. For playing sixths and stuff, when you play it like that, that's a little bit trickier. Right, so we've got this 5th root 3rd here. Okay, so this is different. This has got 3 fingers on as well. So look, E chord. It's got 3 notes there. And those 3 notes are the 5th of the chord, the root of the chord, and the 3rd of the chord. 5R3. Then if I move to the A chord, you can hear I get the same thing. Going from this note to this note, I get 5th, root, 3rd, 5R3, 5R3. Then if I move to the D chord here, then what happens is I got 3 fingers on again, and these follow the same pattern. 5R3, 5R3. That's a D major chord, A major chord, E major chord. And if you think about it in the context of caged, there's the C shape, there's the G shape. So those are the 2 sets, 2 ways of splitting the 5 cage chords. C shape and the G shape are R3-5 shapes. The E, the A, and the D are 5R3 second inversion shapes. Okay? Oh no, the milk was off. Is that a green tea? Oh, well, this won't do. I was going to say Eyup a Yorkshire salute, but I can't. I've been given green tea. It looks like muddy water. Oh, it's good for you. Just keep telling yourself it's good for you. Now, I talk about these 5R3s, and the reason it's good to follow these 5R3s is because they tell us where the important notes are in that chord, the important intervals are. So I'm going to do the E shape, and we've got the 5th, we've got the root, and we have the 3rd there. So the 5th, the root, and the 3rd. And then we get the 5th, the root, and the 3rd. And we're using these as north stars to help us to know where we're going. Now, each of these notes has an emotional value. Music is the language of emotion. There might be somebody on here who doesn't understand a word I'm saying from some country that don't speak English. But when I play this chord, they know what that says on a musical level, on an emotional level. However, if I do this, then that says a completely different thing. There was that story, isn't there, that Babel, where God split the tribes and sent everybody away and confused everybody's language so that they couldn't understand each other. But I think one language was left, and that's the language of music, and that's why it's magic. Isn't that weird? And it is a bit woo-woo, but the thing is, really, this emotion, it is. That's why we listen to it. When you're angry and you put some Slayer on, it's impossible to not get that out of your system. If you're feeling sad, you know, listening to some sad piano music or whatever, it doesn't matter. It can discharge you of those emotions by listening to it. So must be some sort of pull. Now I am getting a bit woo-woo, aren't I, here? So these chords, they do something to you. So what we want to do is we want to tap into that power. Now the thing is, we've got to know the basics of what each of these notes does. They have a function. So let me just switch over. Now this is the difference between major and minor. Here's the major chord. That's what that looks like. Here is the minor chord. The only difference is one note. But that one note is the game changer. That one note there, that movement there, that's the game changer. That's the major sound, that's the minor sound. Let me explain what the notes do. The fifth is transparent. It doesn't have any colour. That's what transparent means. The root, which is the home note, and that's where everything resolves. And when I say third, I'm going to refer to the flat third as well. This is the colour note, the emotion note. I wrote those the wrong way around. That's the emotion note, guys. So if we want to target emotion notes in chord tone soloing, then it becomes about this. So this note is transparent. It doesn't add any colour. In fact, if I play the root note here and this fifth here, I get a power chord. And a power chord, you can put major on it, minor on it, dominant on it. You can't put diminished on it because that implies a flattened fifth, but there's so much you can do. And the more notes you add to a chord, the more complexity you get, the more rigid and fixed it is as a sonic structure. So we want to be aware of that, the more notes you add, that's exactly what's going to happen. This is why triads are so great, guys, because there's only 3 notes. Basically, if we don't have the thirds, we've got power chords, which are really basic sounding 2-note chords. But with that third is where the magic lies. And that is why it's the money note, really, for these triads. So there's my third. To make it minor, I'll lower it 1. That's a major third. This is why the chord is called major. If I make something less, it becomes a minor thing. And you think about it, it's going behind the head note. So this becomes the minor. Now listen to the difference there. Major, happy, uplifting, minor, sad. The 2 polarities of human existence. You are either happy or you're sad, okay? If we take the logic of this, we'll get this A here. You can see we've got the 5th root third. So I'm just going to draw the 5th out the same place, the root out the same place. The major third would be here and the minor third should be here. We've just taken it back 1 fret and this gives us the A minor chord. Now let's do it the same thing here with the D. We're going to get the D minor here. 5th root, let's transfer them over. 5th root. Tick where the third would be, lower it 1 fret. Minor means you're making it less. You need this in your head. If there's a major, the minor is 1 fret lower. If there's a minor, there's a major 1 fret higher. And the majors and the minors happen on the seconds, the thirds, the sixths, and the 7ths. Major and minor are Mr. and Mrs. That's the way to think about them. One's happy, one's sad. It depends on the dynamic that you want to take away from that. Think of them as a married couple. Oh, crikey. Not my marriage, no. We're chord 1 and chord 5 here in my marriage. This is Ricky. Are you upstairs still? Let me just run through these shapes. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. So we got the E major chord. What we do is we turn it into an E minor chord. But it's still 5R flat 3. I'm still thinking that 5R flat 3. Here's the A shape. That note there is the major third. Lower it 1 fret. Goes there. I get the A minor chord. There's the D major chord. 5, R, 3. There's the major third. Lower it 1 to make it into a minor. That's where we get the D minor shape from. The way we can think about key as well is, and I've said this to you before, remember this sequence, guys, of your chords in your key. Major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, diminished. If we just forget about the diminished for now, we end up with majors and minors. And we need to understand that sequence. That's 6 chords out of the key that are taken care of there. Diminished chords, they're going to come up in classical and jazz stuff. Yeah, they'll come up in pop, they'll come up in a few Beatles things and other bits and bobs, clever songwriters and stuff. But generally, not in pop and rock, you know. So once you've got that, then you'll realise this is where these 2 shapes come in, guys. You just need major and minor shapes here. And we can apply them to each of those chords. One way to do it would be, is if I just show you going up the neck. Look, major. It's an E shape with a 5R3. If I move to chord 2, it's an E shape, but it's a 5R flat 3 because that's chord 2 and it's minor. I move this up a whole step. I've got the 5R flat 3 there. Right, that's chord 3. Up a half step, I get to chord 4. This is a major, look. 5R3, right? And then 5R3 here on this 5 chord. Then I'm going to go to chord 6 here, which is at C sharp at the 9th fret here. And I've got the 5R flat 3 there. So that's minor, major, major, minor, minor, major. Going back up. Major, minor, minor, major, major, minor. Yes? Diminished. And then we go back to chord 1. Hopefully, as you hear me going up that, you can hear the do, re, mi scale. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. That's what we're following. That's the foundation of Western music, guys. So we can boil it down to these 2 shapes. That's it. 5R3, 5R flat 3. And here's the cool thing. This ties in with your bar chords as well. So key of G. Okay, key of G. And I'll go through the chords one at a time. Chord 1. 5R3. Major. Chord 2 is minor. 5R flat 3. Okay. Chord 3. 5R flat 3. Okay. Chord 4. 5R3. Chord 5. 5R3, chord 6, 5R flat 3. Basically, I've taken the E shape and the A shape and I'm modifying them into minors to basically outline those bar chords. And those 2 shapes are the mainstay that most people kind of end there with bar chords. That's what happens. Most people don't really play D-shaped bar chords, but you can. And this is why I include the D shape, in fact, because you can play the D shape. Look. So there's the G again. There's the D shape. Can you see the D shape there? 5R3. So that's a G major. Now, if I said that to you that's a G, you might look at me and go, what are you talking about, Ricky? That's a G. And I say, no, that's a G. Because it's basically about the notes that are involved in this, yes? Okay? We've got a G, B and a D in there, okay? There, look. So it's the same chord, but we don't have to stick to this idea that the shapes are the chord. That's one thing I think that confuses people with the cage system. They get locked into this idea that that's a C. All that will ever be is a C, yeah? Even if you move it into, it's still a C. It's just a fancy D, is that? We like this one. We can just really boil it down to that. Now, what the heck has this got to do with soloing, Ricky? Well, basically, everything exists in the now. Everything in life exists in the now. And music truly exists in the now. Because it's not like a building you look at and it's tangible and you can touch it. It really does exist in the now, and it's ethereal and it just disappears and it's gone. You play a chord and it's gone. So what we want to be able to do is we need to be able to target the notes of the chords. So instead of having this blunderbuss approach. So look, if I play that 7th chord again here, and remember I played that pentatonic on the top. sounds great, but as I'm playing those there, I'm playing the 11th, I'm playing the flat third, and I'm playing the root over a chord that hasn't got those notes in it. So I'm adding to the complexity of that chord and making it harder to move around. Now, the next thing I want you to do, and I'm just going to draw this out, and this is borrowing a little bit from page 61, lesson 55, and I'm just going to plot the E out here, guys. Now, we could link it up using the cage system. You can see we've got those there. Now, what we want to do with this is join these up now. We know we've got the 5th, the root, and the 3rd. So there's the E shape that you know and love. We're going to play an E major chord, but use a D shape. Now, I find the easiest way to get there is, it's just to move up. There's the 3rd, and I move up a minor 3rd there, and I get to that shape there. But another way you could do it is you could think, well, chords move like notes. There's a D. If I move it up a whole step, it becomes an E. So that's another way to look at it, yeah? So if I take that E there, then that puts me nice and easy in that position there. Now, I know that that's my root note there, and I could play the C-shaped octave to help me to see where the A shape is there. Can you see the A shape? So, use that 3rd finger to get me there. And I could use that to guide myself. If I'm playing it as lead, then we want to target specific notes. Now, if we're trying to end a phrase, then like I say, this is the importance of knowing the 5th, the root, and the 3rd. The 5th is transparent. It's a good sort of meandering note, yeah? So if you go like here, doesn't really go anywhere. It's not saying much. What would be useful is if I had an E major chord to go underneath, which I just so happen to have. So you can have a listen to this here, guys. I'll take it really slow. Now on this one, I'm going to use that G string to get up to the A shape now. And I'm on the root note there, 5th, root, 3rd. If I target that 3rd, can you hear there's a bit of tension in that? Listen. If I move to the root, it sounds level with the chord. If I move it to the 5th, yeah, 5R3. Remember, 12th fret, everything's just a repeat. So just use the same pattern up here so you can play that all the way through this, okay? Put that on. Got all those notes there. That's on the E chord. And it's the E chord there. So all I'm doing is I'm following those 3. So those 3 shapes there and link it there. What happens if I do an A major chord? Then what I can do is I can use the same 3 shapes. 5R3 here, look. Okay. There's the E shape. Right. Yeah, we've got all that there. Yeah, we can move. Right up with the dusty end of the neck here. So that's the A chord. This is a B chord, following the same thing. Using an A shape. 5R3. But look, Root note sounds home. Hopefully this makes sense, guys. These 3 chord shapes, we can move them around. Now, I haven't got a minor chord in here, and I should have a minor chord in there, but if it wasn't a minor chord, then I would do the same thing there. And link those guys up as well. So you're just looking for those as hotspots and then joining them up. And you can conveniently carry certain notes over. Now, going back to page 61, if we know which chord it is that we're playing on, let's just assume this is chord 1 and it's major. Now we can use this shape here to launch a scale from if we wanted to. But I suppose that's moving away from chord tone soloing, but you're using the chords as north stars to base your scale patterns on. So I could play the major scale now reliably. I know I'm in my E major here. Let me just outline this again because I think it's really important. I know I'm doing it here in E. And I want you to see that it's a completely usable thing in every key. And it just highlights the way that you don't need to learn loads of different patterns in different positions, as long as you can associate them with the chord shape. So look, root, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th. Back to root again. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Now what happens if I want that in G? Then I follow the same pattern, guys. Yeah? 5R3. Take the root. Now I can. Still play it with my 7th chord there. And it makes a bit more sense. So it gives me a lot of scope here. Any key. This is B flat. So you go like this, you go 5R3. There's the root. 5R3. So really it's just an exercise about moving these things around. Let's pick a chord. Let's use a B because I have a B major here. Okay, there's a B major chord. But the shape is telling me where to start. So that's the A shape. Now if I go, I could also play it on the 5R3 on the E shape, look. Now this works because I'm leveraging the power of string pairs, which is a lesson in the book. Go back to an E. It's the My Girl riff. Use that as a tonal reference. Yeah. So all I need to do is just follow that. But I'm not reliant on looking at the E string for the starting note for my pattern, because that's what most people would do. They'd go, all right, this is an E. Yeah, like that. Or if it was in E major. There. We'd do something like that. But we don't want to do that because it's not really that musical, and we're chunking it down. Yeah, look at the D chord here. 5R3. I'm looking at the root. Yeah, so basing it off there. Here's the A shape, 5R3. There's the root. There's the leg. And there's the rectangle, which is now actually a rhomboid. So you end up with these different positions that you can. It's an E major pentatonic, yeah. But what I can do is I can add that. I can add the minor third and have 2 thirds in there, minor third and the major third. Root, second, flat third, major third. But if we just pass through it, then it kind of loses a bit of its glamour. So instead of going, I like to use it as a little grace note. I just crush it up and okay, let's change the chord. Let's put this B on again. You see that? Just outlining the chord. Yeah, that was a B major. Let me put it here. Well, got the open position there because that's a B. It gets interesting when you start to use one chord, add another chord, working with 2 chords, and then working with 3 chords, and then working with minors and majors, and then getting it all mixed up. It's going to take a while, guys. It's something that's worth studying, but what it does is it breaks you out of that box mentality with the pentatonics, which is what it's really about.